The problem with Keir Starmer's costumes and this drip, drip, drip of further information is it comes very close to the sort of thing that ruined Boris Johnson's tenure. And the drip, drip, drip. Boris Johnson says today in the extract from his memoir that he was astonished when the Partygate thing was pitched to him as a problem when the police wanted to investigate. He was astonished. I think it's probably true. I think he could not imagine that anybody would be investigating him. And I think that same patina of surprise and a sense that, entitlement maybe colours Keir Starmer's view. I don't think that either of them were prepared for the sort of media scrutiny which comes with the job. That is the bottom line, and I think possibly that media scrutiny is unacceptable. In recent weeks, Sir Keir Starmer has faced this magnifying glass, this constant investigation about his receiving substantial gifts. Well, I mean, they're nothing in comparison to Baroness Moan. It's just that if you're going to start criticising the size of the gifts which are being tallied around in the Conservative Party in the last administration, then you better make sure that this administration is squeaky clean. And then there's the Labour peer, Wahid Ali. And the total values of these donations is reported to exceed £32,000, sparking calls from the SNP and other parties for a thorough investigation into whether these contributions breach parliamentary standards. The SNP should be focusing on, the wonderful celebration of 25 years of the Scottish Parliament and the King and the Queen at the Scottish Parliament. I think it's his sixth visit. His late mother visited the Parliament 10 times, but he was there when the Parliament began, and he gave a very gracious and wonderful speech. Focus on that, perhaps, but no, the mud slinging never seems to stop. And the controversy centres on donations made by Lord Ali, and I seem to have done so many of these videos about this subject, and yet every time I switch the camera off, there's another trickle of information. This long-serving Labour peer and businessman who seems to have got the Prime Minister stuck in a rut, in some sort of inappropriate trap, I think, of neither of their making. The financial contributions for clothing, but also the use of his Covent Garden flat, and then all the sort of this drip of hospitality. The SNP has particularly highlighted that in a time of economic austerity, such donations could give the impression that Labour leaders are disconnected from the hardships faced by ordinary people. This is particularly damaging, given the party's emphasis on ethical standards and transparency, and that's the problem. SNP MP Brendan O'Hara has been vocal in his demands for a full investigation, likening the situation to the notorious expenses scandal of the past. He argues that without a comprehensive inquiry, public trust and political integrity will be further eroded. This claim is not without foundation. Public perception of political figures is often shaped by these insignificant controversies which overshadow policy achievements, undermine leadership credibility. A cake, a duck house, a tailored suit, glasses, VIP treatment in various Arsenal matches, O'Hara's call for an investigation extends beyond the donations themselves to include the circumstances surrounding Lord Ali's access to Downing Street, which he held for a period following the general election. This raises questions about transparency and potential conflicts of interest, particularly as Lord Ali has previously criticised MPs for their entitlement and misuse of resources. For Keir Starmer, who has positioned himself as a proponent of ethical reform and transparent governance, this issue poses a significant challenge. His responses thus far have been to categorically state that all rules have been followed, and he has sought to reclassify the donations as in kind rather than financial contributions to his private office. However, this clarification has not been enough. It doesn't suffice in mitigating the negative optics of the situation. And of course, it recalls the language which Boris used when the Partygate scandal was emerging. All rules have been followed. No rules have been broken. The implications for the Labour Party as a whole are substantial. The accusations of hypocrisy, calling for public austerity while seemingly benefiting from personal generosity, calling for VAT on school fees, while at the same time giving money to ensure, or taking money to ensure, that members of the Prime Minister's family can sit their GCSEs in comfort. You know, if we go back to that VAT thing, I know I whinge and whine about VAT being imposed in the middle of a school year, but actually, if it was the government rather than the individual schools who were saying, look, pay your school fees in advance, and you don't have to pay the school VAT for another year. So in fact, it's about planning ahead. I would like to see the VAT thing imposed on a 4-year basis, slowly trickling in, so that it never interferes with any students who happen to be facing serious national exams. So that no student will feel, or no parent will feel, obliged to take their child out of one educational system, put them in another educational system in the middle of that process. And that process can last 2 to 3 years for GCSEs, 2 years for A-levels. And the problem with that is if a student moves from one school to another, the syllabus that the other school is following will be different to the syllabus being followed, the set books being followed by the first school. All that work wasted. For what? For a few pounds. And yet, when it comes to the Prime Minister, he simply takes a donation. And that's the worrying level of hypocrisy and a lack of forethought, a lack of planning, particularly when the people who are most likely to be hit with this problem, the people who have already been hit with this problem as schools have closed, are the people who have scrimped and saved in order to afford a private education because the state system doesn't cater to their special needs. And maybe they haven't been fully documented because it takes a lot of time. And people will say, oh, well, if you're rich enough to afford private education, why don't you get on the parent-teacher association and stuff and throw your weight into changing the state system? Because it's not as simple as that. By the time you get onto those boards, your child is already well advanced in the school, and there isn't enough time to change the system to benefit your child. It's a long-term process, that change. What I'm suggesting is the change should be holistic and fundamental. We should change the way that we do education in this country across the board, so that we are genuinely equipping students, children, with the ambition to be the best in whatever school they happen to be entering, so that teachers can buy in or can access full courses in a range of subjects which maybe they don't fully understand, or certainly they're not up to date in, so they can concentrate on what they do best, which is understanding their students, which is motivating and inspiring their students in the classroom. So that information can be brought in via tablets and classroom videos or whatever. We need to embrace the full range of media, and we need to get rid of this nonsense that everything is a handout. We also need to seriously rethink what homework is for. Is homework just to keep the student occupied? Is homework to make up for the failure to teach them properly during the lesson? Is homework something that lingers over a child for 2 weeks? No. I think homework should be a brief process, and actually as little as possible. If somebody is sent home with homework, you clearly haven't taught them enough in the class itself. Homework is about practicing what you've taught, or practicing what a student has learned. And that should be a joyous experience. It should be something people want to do, students want to do, rather than filling in the stuff which was missing from the original lesson. To get back to Starmer, the 2009 MP's expenses scandal badly damaged public trust in British politicians. And these episodes, these scandals, one after the other, highlight the importance of maintaining rigorous standards of transparency and accountability, especially for those in positions of leadership. The case also raises broader ethical questions about the relationship between wealth, influence, and politics. And should political figures be allowed to accept significant personal gifts from wealthy benefactors, even if these gifts are properly declared? The ongoing debate about donations underscores the fragility of public trust and the complex interplay between personal conduct and public responsibility. Whether Sir Keir Starmer has acted within the letter of the law may ultimately be secondary to the question about whether he's maintained the spirit of the ethical standards that he espouses and promotes. For his leadership and the Labour Party, navigating this controversy will require not only legal compliance but also a demonstration of genuine commitment to the principles of fairness and integrity that they advocate. Keir Starmer is all about changing the system, improving the system. So we can't go back to the sort of mistakes which were being made by Boris. The resolution of this issue may have significant consequences for the political landscape as it challenges leaders to align their actions with the values that they promote and to avoid any semblance of impropriety in their personal and professional lives. Keir Starmer, if I were marking Keir Starmer's homework, I would be saying, could do better.